the Bruins hung in there. And again, there was a moment in that game, and you could say that for a number of games this year where the pendulum swung, right? And it was when the Oilers were on the power play. The Bruins were were down 1-0. Pavel Zacha with a breakaway opportunity. He can't convert. And then Connor McDavid going the other way, 2-0, 3-0. They end up winning 4-0. And, Judd, I guess we'll just start this way. What was your overall takeaway from the loss to the Oilers?
Well, I think, as I took down my notes, that only I can read, and it's something that even before Brick had a chance to do his interview with Joe Sacco, and I think we're going to get an opportunity to hear that from last night's postgame show, that I think about the Bruins, and when they started to turn their game around here this season, it was because they were playing that stingy, hard-to-play against game. They were a tough out. And after the Christmas break, if you look at the games, and the Bruins have gone winless in all 5 of those games since the Christmas break, they haven't played the same way that they did leading into the Christmas break and playing in the same way that started to turn their season around once the coaching change was made. They have to play a certain way in order to be successful. And that's being dialed in defensively and all the things that it takes in order for the team to be a good defensive team. And that, I think, is underscored when you're playing a team like the Edmonton Oilers that have 2 of the most dangerous guys on the planet playing on the same roster. And they have a variety of different other weapons, and the Bruins certainly got an idea of how much offensive depth that they have, that whether it's puck management, coverage, how they checking with their feet, structure, breaking out, getting through the neutral zone. We can talk about a variety of different things, but I think in the big picture for me, they just have not played the same way and played with that type of defensive-oriented detail since the Christmas break, and the record reflects it.
And you mentioned the post-game interview with interim head coach Joe Sacco. Let's hear that now and react on the back end.
Joe, just 2 questions tonight. One about tonight's game and the other big picture, I guess. As far as this game against Edmonton, the game plan, executing the game plan, didn't go as designed. What were the biggest issues?
Just to start the game, puck management, and then losing one-on-one battles. They were quicker to pucks than we were. They won more of them, and they executed at a high level. We did not. We gave the puck to them, and that's an elite offensive team. And if you're just going to give them the puck, that's what's going to happen.
Things are getting really tight, not only in the division, but in the conference as well. Points are at a premium, 5 without a win now. How do you get this thing turned around and go in the other direction?
Yeah, it's frustrating, right? We have to find some solutions here moving forward. And again, I just go back to when we have success, we have a certain identity. There's a certain way that we play, and right now we're not doing that. So we have to find some solutions and get back to that game that we know we can play, which will hopefully lead us to some success, because it's frustrating right now.
Well, hopefully the mother's trip will help your team find that. Good luck in Tampa. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Burke.
All right, so the Bruins won 5-1 after the holiday break. They've allowed 15 goals in the last 3 games. 3 of those were empty net goals, but Joe Sacco talking about needing to play a certain way, and the Bruins haven't been able to do that, Judd.
And the other thing, Adam, that he mentioned in there, and I know we've talked a little bit about puck management, and this is why I think the players had such a hard time digesting last night's game, whether that was the comments from Elias Lindholm or Brad Marchand or Charlie Coyle, or even today from Charlie McAvoy. The compete level just simply wasn't where it needed to be. And the interim head coach, Joe Sacco, referenced that. They were getting beaten to pucks, beaten in one-on-one battles. Listen, you're going to make mistakes, especially against high-level players like the Edmonton Oilers feature. But I think one of the things that the Bruins pride themselves on is their ability to compete hard every single night. Listen, it's not going to be perfect across 60 minutes, but I think that they felt that they were out-competed last night, and that's why they've gone winless in 5 straight. And that's why last night's game was a little bit more lopsided than the previous 4 we had seen.
Yeah, and the level of opponent, right? And I think that's why those losses to the Islanders and to the Rangers and even out of the break to the Columbus Blue Jackets. And I know you're looking at that game and saying, all right, it's the first game out of the break. The Bruins, up against it in terms of travel and all that stuff. And so you could sort of excuse that. And you could certainly excuse it after the way they played the next night at home, where they're able to shut out the Columbus Blue Jackets. So you're thinking, based on the way they played before the break, that game in Columbus was the outlier. Unfortunately for the Bruins, that's sort of been emblematic of the way they've played in the other games. And another thing that stands out too, Judd, and you talk about, getting off to good starts and how important it is for this team. Well, the Bruins have been outscored in the first period 5 of the 7 games post-holiday break, outscored 9-4 in those 7 games. And look, and Brick has talked about it on the last podcast. You don't necessarily need results in terms of goal scoring in the first period, but you need to generate opportunities, you need to generate momentum and to have that carry over into the second period, then the third period. But the Bruins have not been able to do that, and it's killed them. And look, I mean, the numbers bear it out. They're 1-12-2 when they're trailing after the first period. They're 10-1-2 when leading after one. It's so important.
I think most teams in the National Hockey League, to your point, Adam, they have a hard time. If you look at the numbers, the teams that score first, the teams that win the opening 20 minutes on the scoreboard, they win the bulk of the games. But if you look back at some of the games, even where you thought the Bruins got off to a good start, think of the game in Washington coming on New Year's Eve. The Bruins, they got a gift at the start of the season. Parker Wotherspoon drives one in and hits a partition. It bounces out in front of the net. Justin Brazeau scores. And the Bruins are off and running. Fantastic. Okay. But then Washington was able to rally for 2 goals. They took a 2-1 lead at the end of 20 minutes. And the Bruins just could never forge their way back into the game. Logan Thompson was terrific. But too often the Bruins have put themselves into some difficult spots in that opening 20 minutes. And because of that, they've wound up on the short end. But the other thing that I think about that Brick mentioned when we were doing the telecast here for the last 4 or 5 games is how many winnable games the Bruins have had during this stretch, but they haven't managed the game the way they've needed to. I think about the Toronto game. So the Bruins are able to forge their way back in, tie that game up at 3, and just over 60 seconds later, they're down 4-3, and it's the Maple Leafs that record, I think it was a 6-4 victory in that game. And there are so many different elements that we can talk about, but I think in the bigger picture, the details that they have to play with, how they have to compete, it just hasn't been there on a regular basis. So that's fine. At this point, I shouldn't say that's fine. That's in the past, I guess, is where I want to go, because now you've got to look forward. You're still in a playoff spot at this point. And if you look at the Eastern Conference, and I know we're going to take a look, whether it's this current road swing that the Bruins are on or this chunk of the schedule that the Bruins are on, they're still in a playoff spot as we speak. But it's going to be hand-to-hand combat basically until the end. One other point. So other than maybe the 17-18 season, where it was Bruce Cassidy's first season, and it took the Bruins a while to find their footing, for the most part, in the seasons after that, leading up to this one, the Bruins got off to some really good starts. So if they ran into a problem like this, they had a little bit of padding. They had some room for error. They don't have that type of room for error now.
No, they don't. And you talk about the details of the game, and I know we are going to move forward and take a look at the Eastern Conference, the road ahead. And again, you're trying to move forward as the Bruins are trying to do. But you have to clean up some of these details. And Joe Sacco was actually talking about that at practice on Wednesday in terms of, what Brick likes to say, valuing the puck.
I was more concerned with how we executed, especially with the puck, than the lack of urgency. I thought that our play with the puck, as far as our turnovers, is really starting to affect our game right now over the last few games. I'll go back 3 games now. The lack of urgency, the lack of desperation. No, I mean, we have got, I mean, certainly you'd like to see more of that from maybe certain individuals at certain points, but overall, no. It's more about us executing with the puck, making the right decisions, making the right plays at the right time. And that's the area right now that we're focused on getting better at.
That execution, those puck touches, that's creeped in quite a few times this season. How do you kind of explain that when it starts to happen and it's kind of team-wide at times?
Well, what happens is, you're looking at the game and you see, a couple of players and something happens where they're not executing the right way. They're maybe trying to force a pass into an area that's covered, or maybe trying to force a play that's just not there. And sometimes that stuff can kind of rub off on everyone else. So it's our job to make sure that we're nipping that in the bud as quick as we can. Having said that, I thought, like I said before, most of their chances, not all of them, but most of them, came off our turnovers. So we have to make sure that we have good support for the person who has the puck, number one, so he doesn't have to make a 30-foot cross-ice pass, that we're in the right spots for each other. Those are all things that we talk about. But, just cleaning up that area of our game is going to help us.
Yeah, and just one final thought on that before we move on, and I'd like to hear your thoughts as well. A lot of this has to do with the fact, I think, in terms of what he was talking about, and they're chasing the score a lot, and they're trying to make big plays, and they're trying to bounce back in games. And, we're seeing these things happen when they're chasing the score more often than not too, right?
I think that's part of it, Adam. You're talking about a team that overall has had a hard time scoring. Certainly have had a hard time scoring on the power play. We can talk about that at other times. But I think what Joe is talking about, and whether it's Brick, Barry Peterson, Billy Jaffe, Razor, everybody, how many times can you think, certainly here in this patch of games, that the Bruins have made unforced errors with the puck? There were certainly some elements there last night. Listen, it's going to happen. It's a game of mistakes. So how do you respond? But I think that there's just too many for the Bruins to try and recoup. And you're playing against a team that features that type of skill. So the Bruins had that opportunity, and it was the play that essentially changed the hinge of the game. The Bruins are down 1-0. They get the shorthanded chance from Pavel Zacha. Then they get command of the puck, but they give it right back to the Oilers, and Connor McDavid is sprung on a breakaway, and the game's over. At that point, essentially, or it's certainly going to be hard, because the Bruins were hit with a 1-2 combination at that point. Oh, it looks like they're going to tie it. Now they're behind by a pair. After they had full control and gave the puck away, and Connor McDavid races in and scores on Jeremy Swayman. Those are the things that you really have to dial back in the Bruins game.
You're